My topic is the last but not the least. It's one of the important aspect of the of our armamentarium on uveitis in diagnosis. No financial disclosure. Biopsy pathology of uveitis can be of various types: anterior chamber, intraocular biopsy, or chorioretinal biopsy, and it can provide very valuable diagnostic information. This can be done by the anterior chamber tap, iris biopsy, vitreous biopsy, retinochoroidal biopsy. It's required in selected cases only. It's not all the cases you require pathologic study. But if you suspect infectious etiology where the diagnosis is not established by standard laboratory test, or lens-induced uveitis, parasitic infestation, endophthalmitis, masquerade syndrome, anterior chamber tap is a simple one. 8-year-old girl, I'm just going through example, persistent hypopia and uveitis, not responding to the topical and systemic steroid. And here is the clinical picture. And you should rule out an masquerade syndrome like retinoblastoma. Indeed, this patient on anterior chamber tap showed basophilic cohesive cells suggestive of retinoblastoma. This is a 14-year-old girl, history of fingernail injury, and you can see the granulomatous KPs and the total complicated cataract. What could be the etiology? You can do an anterior chamber tap, and it can show the macrophages with engulfed lens matter, suggestive of lens-induced uveitis. Here you require only the lens aspiration. This is 7 days post-cataract surgery, and you can see that whitish exudative lesions in the anterior chamber. This because whether it's the lens matter or is the infectious agents. You should do an anterior chamber tap, and this an invasive test will provide the etiology. And here you can see the calcophore Kuevich calcophore stain showed the fungal ball. So anterior chamber tap is required in IL-induced uveitis, infective uveitis, where the diagnosis is not sure by the non-invasive laboratory test, lens-induced uveitis, masquerade syndrome like retinoblastoma, leukemia. The procedure is quite well established. There's an OPD procedure, 27 or 30 gauge needle, 1 cc tuberculin syringe, 0.1 to 0.5 ml of the fluid is taken. Culture should be done for infectious etiology, which is the gold standard, and the polymerase chain reaction. Aqueous humor polymerase chain reaction has been found to be quite safe, and it can alter the diagnosis in quite a significant percentage of the patient. How do you approach? Intraocular fluid can be done direct smear or cytospin. Cytospin is better. Culture and polymerase chain reaction or flow cytometry. Culture is the gold standard, but it takes often long time. Often it's negative. For virus, it's not practical. It takes about a month time. Iris biopsy is required in selected cases where you can see the iris nodules or granuloma, which is not established by the standard laboratory technique. And here you can see a mass lesion in the iris, and you can see a synechia indicating that it could be an inflammatory etiology. Indeed, the iris aspiration biopsy showed, final aspiration biopsy showed KOH calcophore stain, fungal filaments. So where do you do the iris biopsy? Metastatic lesions of the iris and ciliary body, masculine syndrome, ruptured irises presenting as anterior uveitis, iris and ciliary nodule and granulomatous uveitis where there is a sarcoidosis, tuberculosis, and fungal etiology is suspected and is not proven by the standard laboratory technique. Vitreous biopsy is often required in certain situations where, like infectious etiology, not responding to the maximum anti-inflammatory treatment, phacoanaphylactic uveitis, and most important, primary intraocular lymphoma, where it could be a life-saving diagnosis. And here is the vitreous biopsy taken in the aspiration syringe is attached. And I just going to give you an example. 67-year-old female, dimness on the vision in the left eye 2 years. He had developed vitreous hemorrhage and underwent vitrectomy. Complaint of dimness vision in the right eye. What could be the etiology? And you could see that in the left eye there is a subretinal infiltrate. And the vitreous biopsy was done, and vitreous biopsy showed clumps of tumor cells with hyperchromatic nuclei and cytoplasm, and you can see the bilobulated nucleus over here in the pleomorphic nucleus with segmenting. And cell block is better, and it showed the morphology of the cells with necrotic background. This is diagnosed as a primary vitreoretinal lymphoma. One can find out infectious agents like Toxoplasma gondii, Bradishes from the vitreous aspirate. If the astute ophthalmic pathologist looks at the slide. Fine needle aspiration biopsy requires dexterity. Here is a 14-year-old girl, sudden dimness of vision for 1 eye, 1 week, and you can see the biopsy, subretinal abscess. Here we just put a fine needle one. That material was too small to make a cytologic diagnosis, but polymerase chain reaction showed mycobacterium tuberculosis DNA, and it established the diagnosis. And what has happened to the patient after treatment? There is a complete resolution of inflammation with improvement of the vision. This is a 57-year-old lady, painless gradual dimness of vision 9 months, treated for tubercular choroiditis for 6 months. And here we did the fine needle aspiration biopsy, and you can see that there is a necrotic background, and within the necrotic background, large lymphoma cells are seen. Retinal or chorioretinal biopsy requires a dexterity and required in very selected cases. It is required when not responding to the treatment. Etiological diagnosis is not possible by non-invasive tests to differentiate infectious, malignant, and inflammatory conditions, particularly neoplastic lesion, masculinity syndrome. Here is an example of a retinal biopsy, and this was a carcinoma by Dr. Narsingh Rao, and here is that retinochoroidal lesions. It was thought to be cytomegalovirus retinitis, but retinal biopsy showed a different thing. You can see that this is the choroid, this is the retina, there is a necrotic background, but you can see the Toxoplasma gondii cyst. Electron microscopy showed elegantly tachyzoids. So chorioretinal biopsy in the diagnosis of intraocular lymphoma is quite established. Now coming to the molecular biologic sections, with a few slides I like to show you. This is a cutting edge diagnosis. Report is ready within 12 to 24 hours. Infectious cytology can be elegantly demonstrated. And here is the positive sample. Positive control should be positive, negative control should be negative, indicating high degree of sensitivity and specificity. I just going on example, 35-year-old female. He was treated with the oral steroids and intravitreal triamcinolone. Base corrected visual acuity counting finger 3 meter, and you can see the vitreous says in one eye and exudates in the other eye. Diagnostic vitrectomy in the right eye was done as there is a vitreous hemorrhage. And what happened is that when we could see the large clumps of lymphocytes, and here is the granuloma is seen, suspected of granulomatous pathology, TB or sarcoid. But to establish the diagnosis, we went and did the PCR. PCR was positive for MPB64, I610 real-time PCR was 2,115 copies, and MPB64 and I610 region was positive. So next is the real-time PCR or quantitative PCR. It's a kind of a technique, progress of PCR reaction in real time. A fluorescent molecule, the fluorescent molecule showed cytopathology of polymerase chain reaction in tubercular intermediate uveitis. So this is a case of 42-year-old man developed cytomegalovirus anterior uveitis. Real-time PCR showed copies of the fluorescent curve showed that the elevated copy number of the mycobacterium tuberculosis DNA. We did publish this case real-time polymerase chain reaction in recurrent cytomegalovirus anterior uveitis. This is a 32-year-old patient with history of encephalitis, and you have seen the necrotizing retinitis with separate lesion, and semi-nested PCR is positive. But what is very important is the fluorescent curve showing 88,874 copies. Polymerase chain reaction based assays can be useful for the diagnosis of viral retinitis. What's new? This is the last slide. The lymphoid neoplasia, high frequency of MYD88 mutations is diagnostic of vitreoretinal lymphoma, which can be established from the vitreous fluid study. So clinical diagnosis in summary is quite important. I agree. Judicious use of non-invasive laboratory test is essential. Intraocular biopsy is useful in diagnostic dilemma, in infections, in muscular syndrome, in such selected cases. And now with the advent of PCR with new armamentarium, reliable diagnostic tool in infectious uveitis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We are happy to take any questions. Pooja, yes. Please come here. Yeah, Pooja. No, you carry on. Can we have the standing mics on?
Hello. Ma'am, I have two questions. First one is a comment on the viral retinitis presenting as branch retinal arterial occlusion. Sometimes if the patient is coming to us in the very early phase, when the disease is just evolving, and we often don't see the typical tongue-shaped lesions in the periphery. So it's always important to have a good clinical history. Like I have a patient who's under follow-up for last 3 years. He was diagnosed as a BRAO. He was a 40-year-old man, immunocompetent, and referred to cardiologist. That the workup was normal. The very next day he came to us for second opinion. The only history was a flu-like illness, and there was some suspicion that no, it could be a simple BRAO. So you should look for some inflammation, like maybe some subtle vitritis, maybe just over the lesion. And if you have a good multimodal imaging, then you can do a OCT scan through that lesion if you see some cells on the vitreoretinal interface or on the FA. Because in my patient, the BRAO and the retinitis lesions were along the inferior temporal arcade only. And sometimes you have to keep, you can keep the differential diagnosis of toxoplasma also, or cat scratch disease. And again, as ma'am said, that we should not wait for the investigations to come. We should start an empirical treatment, maybe of the two most probable diagnoses together. And as the patient follows or the investigations come, you can gradually revise the diagnosis.
Okay.
I
So the
mean,
question?
ma'am, question is for the post-fever retinitis, if sometimes we only have the macular edema or the serous detachment at the macula, and with peripapillary retinitis lesions and no serology is coming positive, so is there any experience of giving anti-VEGF?
Padma,
To take care
post-viral
of.
macular edema management, quick. Please come.
Retinitis. The macular edema or the retinitis per se does not require any specific therapy. We observed that spontaneously also they resolve. If they have optic disc involvement, papillitis or retinal vasculitis, then is an indication to start the patient on systemic steroids. Anti-VEGF is also found to be effective in the reduction of the macular edema. We have taken different arms, whether you treated the patient with steroids, antiviral with steroids, without a treatment, and anti-VEGF, all found to be effective in post-febrile after ruling out any specific etiology, especially the DNA group of viruses.
We just have time for one more question. Can we have yours, please?
Can I just add a comment to what she raised?
It's a very
Ma'am,
basic.
can I add a
Yeah,
comment?
sure, quick.
So, as you rightly mentioned, another thing what we need to keep in mind is that it's not always essential that you get the vascular occlusion in the same eye where you are having the viral infection. You have to carefully look on the contralateral eye also. So you may have a subtle underlying inflammation which may be causing a vascular occlusion in the contralateral eye.
Okay, next question, please. Yeah.
A very basic question. Can we start an antiviral therapy on our own without the help of the internist? And if, and if yes, then what are the precautions that we should be taking?
I think we all understand that antiviral, we do not have the time for internist many a times. So whenever you suspect viral, the herpes group, it can be started on your own. It can be IV or it can be oral, and these days we have Van-Gelcyclovir which can be started. Renal functions need to be done. That's it. It's quite safe.
Can I
Yeah,
have
last
one-
question, please.
one
Yeah.
I think this is the right platform,
Sure.
I've been looking for, and from Nepal. Our experience has been recently, I tried to publish this.
Shapu.
No, not quite SAPU, it's a different. SAPU is probably it's a seasonal endophthalmitis. It's the one I think I reported way back in 1978, and still we are getting patient, and the children going blind, and we have not been able to manage it. Now, the other part of the question I want to ask is, I've been looking forward to a forum like this. In our experience, a group of patients, young patients, farmers by profession, young males and females, coming to us with vitritis and snowballs, diagnosed as pars planitis with no systemic disease, Does have anyone encounter, intermediate, you want to call it, or pars planitis uveitis, has something to do with the use of pesticides and fertilizers. And I thought they are responsible because we are saying young people, farmers by profession, and they usually resolve with subtenon steroids and topical,
Dr.
but basically subtenons, you know. My question is
Yeah,
there
is
any
it
experience
yeah.
of pars planitis or intermediate UVI, you want to call it, with the use of pesticides
Dr.
and
Biswas.
fertilizers? Thank you.
So there is no study like that
There's no
at
study.
the present time. I think it's still a conjectural stage, and I'm not sure that it can cause.
With
But
smoking, yes, I mean, not the direct evidence, but smoking does increase the risk, but never heard of pesticides.
One can do a blood test to see the levels and do a study.
Some
Okay,
cases
just 5-10 patients will be enough.
Absolutely.
we have found infectious agents in granulomatous intermediate uveitis, spillover anti-uveitis from the PCR study, the aqueous fluid, mycobacterium tuberculosis DNA.
I think we can discuss your problem outside the hall probably.
But I have looked into it and I
Of
found one
course.
study way back somewhere, role of pesticides
Yeah,
and
we will just
fertilizers,
discuss that out.
in sarcoidosis. You know, there was a
We will
case
just look
mentioned.
at it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for the overwhelming response to the uveitis symposium. Thanks a ton.